It sucks to think this way, but at the end of the day, safety is a priority, and we have to chase down our goals still. So we're bubbling up our run safety refresher to the top with this episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to Coach Quip. I'm Coach Robyn.
I'm Coach Chris.
And this is a special episode coming at you today. We have a lot of you all building miles as we lose daylight, right? And we've actually had a couple of instances here at Edge that make us really remember it's not always the most accessible sport from a safety standpoint. We hear a lot about how accessible running is. You know, you can do it anywhere. It only takes your shoes. But in the reality is we're running outside, right? And running outside comes out with a bunch of different variables and risks. And, you know, we're, again, at a point in our season where we're needing to do more of it as we are losing our daylight.
So unfortunately, this episode is born out of some incidents that we've had here with a couple of our Edge runners, and we want to make sure that we are messaging this not just to the Chicago community, but to any runners so that you can be aware of your surroundings and be aware of your safety when you're out there because, as you said, safety is the priority. This can happen anywhere, right? This is not just a Chicago thing. I had incidents in New York when I lived there. This could, anywhere people run and it's potentially dark outside, this can happen.
And it's not a new phenomenon,
Yeah.
Unfortunately. I think there's just a power dynamic that happens more and more when you are a runner out on the streets. I even remember being, 18, 19 years old and running definitely solo in the dark on a college campus at U of I. And on more than one occasion, I, was approached or followed and just made to feel like very much unsafe. It didn't necessarily stop me, but it did make me really aware of not doing certain things like running with music. It also probably is where a lot of my love from dogs came from because I was able to always run with my brother's dog, who saved my ass more than once. He was a big Rottweiler. So these are all, things that have always been on our radar as runners, and we just want to bubble them up so that you all have them on your radar too.
Now, this is something that primarily happens to women and people who are femme presenting, who are out running, but it can happen to anybody. So we want to be very clear about that. And if you are a cis straight dude out there listening to this episode, there are also things that you can do to help runners feel more safe. So this episode is for everyone. We want to make sure that you know what the issues are and also how you can deal with those issues and stay safe out there on the run.
Yeah, and it was interesting. We actually found ourselves inside the Edge community kind of mentioning these incidents kind of as they were coming in inside of our WhatsApp chats. And that was great. And we had, a really good, diligent response, very empathetic and productive. And it got me thinking like, oh, we actually need to put something that faces outward, and isn't inside of these chats so that people, have it top of mind.
Yeah, because here's the thing, right? If it's happening to one person, it's very likely happening to other people too. And if you are targeted on the run, if something happens, I think it's really important to say something because you never know how many other people will be in the path of that sort of violence in the future, or that it's happened to already who just haven't felt safe enough or taken the initiative to say something.
Right, absolutely. So just backing up what the two recent instances were, we've checked with both of these individuals. They're okay with us sharing these. The first one was a female runner that went out onto the lakefront path somewhere around daybreak. I think probably already had a little bit daylight out there and was running solo on a weekday, right, somewhere around 6 a.m. She was running. There was a group behind her, and a gentleman tried to, I'm guessing, came out of behind a tree or something where she couldn't really see him and tried to grab her. And she's a strong, fast runner and got the hell out of there. He, interestingly enough, paid no attention to the group right behind her, which just shows that he was targeting single solo runners in, not broad daylight with a ton of people around. The other one in a very different part of the city was walking, again, similar time of day, but on a weekday down her sidewalk, and wasn't actively running at the time, and a gentleman on a motorized scooter, which unfortunately this is a power dynamic that we're seeing more and more of, whether you're just running out at 9 a.m. on a weekday or 6 a.m. They have quite a getaway option on there, and the gentleman came, jumped off of his scooter, touched her very inappropriately, got back on the scooter and came off. And interestingly enough, when I talked to her, I was like, you got to report it. She's like, I already did. And they literally the precinct already knew the description of the guy. This is something that he has done over and over and over, and she now has video, hoping they can apprehend him, but this is clearly a repeat offender. So, have, just mindset that those things are possible to happen. And we are going to talk again in this episode what to do as a runner or walker to stay safe, as well as what you can do as a bystander, which is hugely important to have your head on a swivel.
All right, so let's talk about what you can do if you are out there running or walking to stay safe. And, we're thinking this is general tips for all times, right? But especially those low light situations, early morning, late at night, when there's not a lot of people around. So the first is to group up. We often say that there's safety in numbers, and that is for a reason. To your example, right? The person who was solo was targeted, the people in a group were not. So find an accountability buddy, find somebody that you can run with if you are going outside. And so even just one person, but especially like if you have more than one person, your ability to be safe is exponentially higher.
Next up is to plan your run and also share your plan. This is something that I did even this morning at 8 a.m. when I went out with my husband. Pick your routes that are better traveled, or maybe have others around, right? It doesn't assume safety, but it does increase the likelihood that other people will be around. And make sure that you tell someone where you are, or find your friends people that, hey, I'm going out on a run, be back in 30. They'll know because you have your phone on you when you're supposed to return, and also where you are location-wise.
Next up is headphones. We recently did an episode about running with music, where we talked about having just one headphone in if you choose to do that, or using the bone conducting headphones that leave your ears open, or most safe is to not have headphones in at all, especially in those early morning and late night situations.
Yeah, in these situations, being entertained, I think a lot of times when we're running out in questionable lighting, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm getting up so early or so late. We want to kind of have something to give us that lift. Listen to your pump-up song before you head out, right? Mm-hmm. Being entertained is never as important as being aware. And if you're running, you're already breathing hard. That's already, it's already hard to hear on top of that. Seriously, though, there are times even this morning that I was like, wow, someone could come right up on me and I wouldn't even know it, I am gasping for air. Next up is secure your essentials, right? This is basic things, but like carrying a phone, right? Having that physically on you, and maybe who knows, maybe even cash or a transit card, or maybe your phone, is able to do all of those things. Some runners carry pepper spray. You can do that in Chicago as a woman, especially. That tends to be something that we see on a lot of keychains. Practice it on a tree in a safe environment, so you know how to use it, or a safety alarm. I know birdies are really popular. Just something that might, again, not false sense of security, but just having it handy in case you would need it if you are solo.
Yeah, those are tools, right? So I would also say a whistle is a great one,
yeah.
Right? Anything that will draw attention, like the alarm, and I think also. I run with my phone in my hand, and a lot of people are like, I can't believe you always run with your phone in your hand and not in your belt. And I realize it's sort of a mixed bag, right? Because having this in my hand could make me a target for somebody on a scooter to come up and just snatch it out of my hand. But also, I feel like I'm ready to record, I'm ready to call 911, I'm ready to seek out help if I need to. So, that's definitely something that you want to have. And if you are carrying cash or your card, tuck that away. That should be in your pouch or in your pocket, not in your hand.
Yeah.
But definitely, those are the essentials that you want to make sure that you have with you.
Timing, not a surprise here, right? Daylight whenever possible. Even if that means you're going to have to face Henry the Heat Monster, there are times that I'm like, oh, I want to go out. But that's probably not the best option, right? If you don't feel confident about the timing or the lighting, chances are you probably need to wait until you have an opportunity to run a daylight.
And that really goes into the next one of trusting your instincts, right? So if you have the sense oh, it's a little sketchy out there, then trust your gut. Just choose another option. You either need to choose another time or go inside. So treadmills are a safe alternative to outside if you have access to one, and that's a great alternative.
Trusting your instincts too, we all have very, very strong spidey senses, right? We just have to be in tune with them, which is also why I say no headphones, no music when you're in these situations. If you can see it, you get an eerie feeling, cross the street, figure out a way to get around it, change direction, run up to another runner maybe and ask, hey, can you run with me for a little bit? Especially female to female, I've never had that not work. That really does tend to help. And you had a great one about traffic.
Yeah, so if you are running, especially on a one-way street, but running against traffic, I mentioned some of the incidents I've had in New York involved being on one-way streets because there are so many in New York, and we were going with traffic and having vehicles follow us and yelling at the female runners that were in our group. And, just being able to make sure that you are crossing traffic and they're just going to have you for a blip, not the entire way down the street.
You have a lot more
really
power.
Helpful. Yeah.
Okay, so toggling now what to do as a bystander. And these are things that, I even remember telling this to Brian recently and probably the last month of hey, when you're out on a run, make sure you can see, one, so that he's not a target if he's running solo, but also keep your eye on the women that are solo in front of you, just to make sure nothing sketchy is happening.
Yeah, I've had this, I think anybody can be a bystander, right? And anybody can take action and help other people. And I think there is something, the power dynamic of men out on a run versus women out on a run. If you are a dude out there listening to this, just be cautious in how you're approaching a woman to be a bystander and help out. Because, I think there is something about if I was to roll up on a woman and be like, hey, do you want to run? Even if I was intending to be helpful because I saw something, there's a way in which you have to approach that's a little softer, or hey, I just noticed this thing and are you okay? Just checking in. So that kind of goes into stepping up if something seems wrong, right? So as a bystander, if you are noticing something, take action. Don't, what's the worst that could happen if I came up to you and said, hey, are you okay? You can be yeah, I'm okay.
Right.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Or you can say no, back off, jerk, or whatever,
totally.
If I scared you or whatever. But if I ignore something and something happens, that's something that I could never undo. So it's better off to just ask if somebody needs help or to intervene and then sort it out after than not do anything at all.
Right, and you said it best too of it also kind of goes if you're aware of other runners and you're seeing something and you're getting the heebie-jeebies, chances are you should probably ask them if they, hey, I'm there's some weird stuff happening. Is it cool if we're together for the next mile? Mm-hmm. I think that's smarter. We had an interesting couple times actually when we've been out on track with all women group of unsolicited, of course, men coming up and, whether or not they're sober, who knows. And the most recent time that it happened, the gentleman that was interacting with us actually wasn't bad, but it did look really, really weird. And we had another guy who was just happened to be warming up, ready to do his own speed run. He came up to our group and very kindly was hey, he came up from the back and you could tell what he was doing. And he's hey, are you all cool? I'm cool to start and end my run here if you need to. And I was you know what? Keep an eye on us, but I think we're okay. He's being all right. But I was afterward, after we wrapped, I went up to him and I was I really appreciate you doing that. It makes me feel good to know that you are looking out for other runners. I do assume on a track that because everything's so bubbled, that we're a little bit more safe, but we've now proved twice that isn't 100%. You're also a target out there too. So, it just stepping up if you think it seems wrong. Yeah. As a woman running with solo runners, I will actually go up to them and ask, especially if we're similar paces or if we're in kind of a low light zone or if we're about to be in a low light zone, hey, I know that you're alone and I'm alone. Can we run together for a little bit? I do think that that's best done female to female. I think that I've never been turned down. I've probably done it, I don't know, less than 20 times in my lifetime, but in both times, you just have this moment of yeah, this is the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, it really kind of almost provides a sisterhood of awareness and there's no reason, in my opinion, not to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if you're similarly paced or if it's even just for a short stretch of time, right? So we all know our routes and you might know that there's a certain part that's a little bit darker or a little more remote off the path or just feels a little sketchy, and running through that part together, and then you can go your own pace in your own way, but it's definitely worth, even if you have to adjust your pace, getting through that section safely. As a bystander, another thing that you could do is to distract. So, you can intervene in a situation if you see something through a variety of ways, like maybe the most extreme would be just yelling and maybe physically removing somebody or stepping in between someone. But also, I've had situations where I've pretended that I know someone.
Yep.
So not specifically on a run, but like on the train. And I've seen a man harassing a woman. And I just came up to her and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're on the train. It's so good to see you." And I sat down right in between them.
Yeah, just to stop it. Yeah.
And she was a little stunned at first, but then realized what I was doing. Right. And then we pretend talked for a little bit and he went on. So there are so many different ways that you could do that, but that is just a great way to shift the attention from the incident that's happening or about to happen, and also to have the presence of another body in that situation, because to your point about being solo, when there are more people and people are watching, it's less likely that something will happen.
It's like instantly diffusing it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Next is an opportunity to possibly delegate. Like, this really depends on the situation, right? But if you need to find someone to step in and you're not comfortable to step in, or the situation is escalating, you can absolutely find someone and say, "You call 911," right? You definitely have this if you are running in a group already, to be able to kind of divide up of like, I'm going to go here, you're going to, call the police, whatever. That's an extreme situation, I realize, but don't be afraid. Don't think you have to do it all if you have others around you.
Yeah, but the bystander effect is real, right? And we know that from past studies that if there's one person who's watching an incident, they're more likely to intervene than if there are 5 people watching an incident, because everybody else thinks someone else will do it, right?
It's very true.
So our message here on this episode is for you to be the person to take action, no matter how many people are around you. And you can also recruit help. So I've also had situations where I was like, okay, I see something's happening, but I am definitely not comfortable going over there by myself. Hey, you, stranger, will you help me real quick? And then we both walk over and help to diffuse it, right? So like the thing you have to remember here is it's very much that CPR model, where if you're doing CPR, one of the things they tell you is to look directly at a bystander, to point to them and give them instructions.
Because people will go to action right away.
But if you just yell out, "Call 911," everyone's like, well
someone else will do it. Yeah.
Especially in today's day and age where everybody is filming and documenting, right? So everybody wants to have the viral clip of the incident that that they capture. But you should never do that at the expense of calling for help.
Yeah.
So along those lines, we do say that documenting is a way that a bystander could be helpful. But again, make sure that help or whoever it is notified first before you start to document. But it's always so helpful. I mean, this goes from an incident on the run to a car accident, right? Having somebody who has footage for you to be helpful in case you have to call police is, it's hard to find, and it's so helpful if you do that. So I've actually told my wife, if we ever get in a car accident, a wreck, I immediately want you to whip out your phone and just start recording, right? Because that footage can be the difference between somebody getting caught or not getting caught.
Well, and in one of our instances of our runners, they were able to get from a ring camera a visual of this guy, and now they have that turned over to the police, which hopefully helps them put the pieces together. Last but not least is checking in. So once the situation has tamped down, is in controlled, and the harasser has left, check in with the victim and ask if they're okay. I mean, that is step one. They're probably going to say yes, and maybe they're not. So you have to kind of read that as well. Seek follow-up help with them as you see fit. So whether that's calling 911, medical support, give your contact information. This is one I always kind of forget to do, is I check in, but then I forget to tell them who the heck I am. So, giving Instagram or your phone number or your email, make sure that they have it on them, text it to them so that you can continue to check in on them, but then also there's a way for them to contact you.
So we're not doing this episode to be alarmist, but this is something that every athlete who trains outdoors needs to be aware of, and it's just a good reminder for all of our running community, whether you are a person who might be targeted on the run or someone who might need to intervene if you see something.
Yeah, we hope that you never have to deal with any of this, but even if you do, hopefully now you have a little bit more ammo on how to navigate it.
If this episode was helpful, please send it to your run club and to your friends so that they know how to stay safe on the run and what to do if they see something as well.
Until next time.